Oh man. Hey, I don't even know if some people they've never even heard of The Price is Right, bro. Like that was so good. I was just making me nostalgic hearing that music, bro.
That's so
Hey,
funny.
hey, I remember being a kid staying home from school watching The Price is Right. You know what I'm saying? But the price is right because if you're hanging out with Jose and Aaron, we're going to teach you how to price property effectively and efficiently the first time around. Isn't that right, Jose?
Yeah, so I remember when I went on 100 listing appointments and only taking about 5 of them,
Mhm.
walking away from listing appointments because they wanted to list the property 5 or $10,000 higher than what I felt the market was recommending. And then I remember keeping track of the listings and watching like another agent take it at the price that they wanted to. And then they would do a small price reduction and the property would sell very close to whatever price I said. And I'd be like, I was right, but I didn't get paid on that. And that was a problem. So what I start doing instead of like trying to be right, Aaron taught me that there was a price reduction process. And when he told me that, I had never in my career practiced a price reduction. And he actually showed me the roadmap and showed me the formula. And today he's going to be doing that for you.
Yeah, that's what's up. And we were talking prior to this, and you were saying how much of a game changer that was for you, right? Because you didn't have an issue in terms of doing the hard work of prospecting, going on
Mhm.
the appointments, understanding the pricing portion, listing presentation, understanding the price conversation, recognizing that asking for an adjustment is an extension of the pricing portion of the presentation. All of
Mhm.
that combined made a dramatic impact in your ability to list property in high volume, not only list more properties, but also for that inventory to turn over. And I remember we were having a conversation one time and I said something to you, and you could talk about it perhaps before we get into it, where I was like, Jose, and you were like, yeah, I'm like, you have a really good brain. Use it. And you were like, oh, right. So can you talk a little bit about like what that was about and how that was helpful?
I think it was about a price reduction and it was going back to the seller for the same price reduction. And I was asking you if I was to use the same exact script as I used the first time. And what you said to me is like, you've got a very good brain, use it. Like, that doesn't make any sense, basically, that you would say the same exact words verbatim to him as you did the first time. What was an eye opener for me was that you asked me a question. I remember you said, okay, whenever you get or ask for a price reduction, when do you ask for it? And then I
Mm.
was thinking, like, okay, you asked for it like second or third or maybe fourth week into the listing. And like, no, no, no. The price reduction actually starts at the listing presentation. And when you said that to me, you walked me through a process of all the different times that you're embedding that conversation about a price reduction prior to actually getting the price reduction. And then you also showed me a formula of like what to ask for, like different percentages. So in today's videos, guys, what we're going to be going over is we're going to be going over that exact process. We're going to be going over the different objections that you're going to get whenever you get a price reduction. So you want to make sure to watch until the end because we're going to be going over, well, is there something else that you can do to market my home? We're going to be going over them. Well, why would I reduce the price? I don't even have an offer. Like if I don't have an offer, like if somebody was really interested in my property, they would submit an offer on the home. So we're going to be going over the different objections that you're going to get at the listing. So
That's right. Because here we give you the good shit, not the bullshit. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna give you the tactical, practical tools that you need in this business to actually get your unfair share. And remember that most people who teach mindset, they do so because they can't teach tactics. And we're here teaching you tactics. So to Jose's point, the pricing portion of the listing presentation is a specific conversation. And the price adjustment conversation actually begins there because I'm the way that I set up the pricing portion of the conversation of the listing presentation, the context with which we're having that conversation, and asking questions once we come to an agreement on where we're going to get started off right, and really managing expectations moving forward is the beginning of the price reduction conversation. Okay. And that's a critical thing. So we can get into the kind of nitty gritty and the details of it. So let's say we're looking at some information. Well, prior to even looking at the information, the way I set up that conversation is by saying something like, I prepared for you that market analysis, and the purpose of which it's really an attempt to make an educated guess with regards to value. Right now, notice that choice of language, an educated guess. Jose just shared with you when he went on 100 appointments and only took like 20 listings. It's because he was going in there and saying, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
When you do that, you're going to create friction and pushback, and people will not hire you because you said this is what it is, because they're not in agreement with you. So instead, I'm letting you know right out of the gate, like, hey, this is an attempt to make a very educated guess with regards to value. And it's comprised of two types of research. The first type is what's active on the market and not selling. And that's actually very helpful to us, Jose. Do you know why? And he's like, well, why? Well, the neighbors, they've done us a huge favor. Do you know what it is? What's that? Well, they've tested the market for us at certain prices, and it's not working. That's very helpful. That's very useful information. We can learn from that. The second piece of data we're going to look at very closely is what's actually sold and closed most recently. And that's also very valuable. Do you know why, Jose? He's like, well, why? Well, because what that shows us is what buyers and sellers have been agreeing to over the last, let's say, 90 to 180 days that homes like yours are worth. And in looking at those two pieces of information, what we're going to see come to the surface, Jose, is not a pinpoint to the penny in terms of price. Instead, what we're going to see is a very tight, realistic range as to what is going to be reasonable. Does that approach make sense to you? Now, time out. Jose just shared with you prior to me and him having this conversation and me showing him kind of procedurally how to do this. He was going in and saying, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It was creating lots of friction. There would be disagreement, and he would walk out and be like, well, I showed them, I was right on the price, and then he wouldn't get the listing. And the way that I've just set that conversation up, one, intentional purposeful language, educated guess with regards to value. Then I give them the parameters with which we're going to determine the value, which is logical. I'm asking them questions so they're involved, engaged in the process, instead of me like having like a flip charts and graphs about price per square foot or anything like that, right? Then I shared with Jose is that what we're going to end up with is not a pinpoint to the penny. Again, bringing that back up. It's not going to be like this precise amount. Instead, it's going to be a tight, realistic range. So it's going to be reasonable. And then from there, it comes down to strategy. And we'll go over the two strategies that you have at your disposal, because price is a strategy and attempt to get the most. And I want you to feel comfortable with the strategy we ultimately end up choosing. And I want to be clear, Jose, whatever you decide, I will support you 100%. So now I've given you the framework with how we're going to make this decision. We're going to come with a tight, realistic range. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have options in terms of strategy, because price is a strategy, and we'll go over those strategies. So that, however long that takes to get through that 5 to 10 minute sequence, that sets up from there moving forward the rest of the conversations that you're going to have about price with the client.
Mm-hmm. And I think it was funny because I went on a listing appointment yesterday, and she told me that she met with another agent. And one of the things that she told me why she didn't list with him is because he didn't give her options. It was almost just like, this is the way it is. This is the price. This is the commission. This is this. And consumers like options, like they feel in control as well too.
100%. I think you're absolutely right. The other thing I think is true is that methodology, like that approach of presenting, worked when consumers had no access to any information. So 30 years ago, when nobody had the internet, like imagine a world where nobody knew what any home sold for. Imagine a world you had no idea there'd be a sign outside, but you had no idea how much they were asking. Imagine a world where your neighbor sold their home down the street, but you have no idea what they sold for. And the only access point to that information was an agent. Well, over the last 30 years, that's changed radically. So what I would propose or suggest is that so should my method of presenting. You can present in a way that's like kind of authoritative and paternalistic, like I know and you don't, right? Like I study homes and prices every day, therefore I assume you listen to me. Like that exists in an environment where people have no access to ever information. If you're continuing to still present like that, you will create friction. And now that they do have access to all that information, they know more about their property than probably you do because they refresh it every 5 minutes, right?
And the reality too is that there's no way to know the exact price of a property. And the reason is that they all vary based on square footage, they all vary based on condition, they all vary based on location, they all vary based on lot size, and they vary based on when it sold as well too. Like if it sold 2 months ago, the market could have improved, the market could have gone down. So there's no exact, like this is exactly what it's worth, or we're making a $5,000 adjustment for this restroom or that, because then it becomes like very subjective, like meaning like it's very subjective in
Well,
that
and it
sense.
becomes open to debate,
Yeah.
which is really what you don't want when you get into this like pissing match with the seller, like about what it's worth. Like the moment that starts to happen, you might as well pack your shit up and leave. Like you're not gonna get to the ultimate end result. So the key component here, and it's interesting because Jose, when we were first working on this together all those years ago, what I shared with him is like, listen, man, what I'm seeing in my choice of words, it's important. What's equally, if not more important, is the process underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first said that to you, I don't think you really understood what I was saying. 6 months, 8 months later, I remember where I was. You actually called me and you were giving me an update. Like you'd gone on an appointment and you were like, yo, I understand the process underneath.
Well,
Like I get it. I understand what we're doing here.
I think you described it to me as a cuadro, and you said the
Yes.
word cuadro in Spanish. You're like, a cuadro, like, do you know what a cuadro is? And I was kind of like, Aaron doesn't know Spanish. Like, how does he know that? Then I remembered his wife is Cuban, you know?
Yeah.
And you explained it to me as understanding the framework. And if you understand the framework, not just regurgitating words for the sake of regurgitating words, you described it to me as knowing the process and knowing the framework, and then that would help me. Now, where I wanted to take this was, like, let's say that you go over the two strategies, and let's say for whatever reason they choose the higher strategy,
Yeah.
right? The way you explained it to me, or at least the way I remember you explaining it to me, they sign a contract and then you have the talk with them.
Yes.
So this is what is going to happen next. And that was the first step in the price reduction script
Correct.
after
And
they
that's
select the higher
actually,
strategy.
yes, and that's actually where the price adjustment conversation begins.
Begins right there.
And I want to be clear too for everybody that's, kind of watching, is that that's where it begins. Also what I went through and the way I set it up sets the quadra for the conversation. It sets the framework moving forward because I'm going to keep referencing it back, right?
And,
As we have conversations. So it's like, if you remember, when we initially were making a decision on how to position the property price wise on where to get started, we discussed that very quickly the marketplace would tell us if they saw value in our price and product. Do you remember that conversation? They'll be like, well, yeah. And do you remember how they would tell us if they saw value? So in other words, I'm going to reference back to it. So it's very important that you utilize that kind of language and process to describe how you're going to come up with a value, because it's going to be the guiding kind of light moving forward as we continue to have this conversation. We're going to go back to it and reference it. So let's say, like Jose's saying, they're like, well, so let's say you present and you're like, okay, well, having looked at this information very closely, seen what's active on the market, not selling, seen what's sold and closed most recently, realistically, if you were a buyer and you were going to buy this home all over again in its current condition, where do you think you'd feel comfortable making an offer that you believe would be reflective of fair market value? And then be quiet and let them tell you, right? And being quiet may be difficult for a lot of people because you want to pontificate and tell them how cool you are and how much you know. But I need you to understand that thinking doesn't happen when people are speaking. It happens when they're processing in the quiet. So you got to get comfortable in the quiet. Oftentimes we're like insecure. So we fill the air with words that don't matter. So just be quiet and listen. And they're like, yeah, I see what you're saying, Jose. It's somewhere around that 550 number. Yeah, I agree with you. That the market is showing us somewhere around 550. So notice, not me, the market is showing us somewhere around 550. So now it just comes down to strategy. Because remember, like we discussed, price is a strategy and attempt to get the most. So we can go over the strategies that you have now because I want you to feel comfortable with the one we end up choosing. And as I indicated before, whatever you decide, I'm going to support you 100%. Fair enough? Great. Now, here are the two strategies. The first strategy is we can start higher than 550. The logic behind that strategy is I can always come. Now, here's how I would do it, Jose. I would say I would actually use my hands because this is the way that you instruct adults. So for everybody who's watching, when I say I can always come, what just happened in your brain? You're like, down. I can't go back, up. That's what happens in your brain. I don't have to say that to you, but you will automatically know it. And they're like, yeah, and I always want to leave room too. And that's how I would do it. I'd be quiet and they'll tell me, negotiate. Why am I saying those two things? Because ask yourself a question. If you've been selling real estate long enough, are those not the two things that they tell you all the time? I want to leave room to negotiate and I can always come down and can't go back up. So I'm just putting it on the table. And you'll see them. They'll be like, yeah, they might cross their arms and be like, yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So I want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with that strategy. It's not bad. Now, here's what's super interesting. The majority of you guys, when you present price, you make that option bad. Whether it's unconsciously with tonality, whether it's like with facial expressions, whether it's like, you know what I'm saying? You make it bad. And it's important that you not make it bad. So I want to be clear. That's not bad. It's not wrong. There are some challenges with it. So I'd like to review those challenges with you so that way you can decide if it's a strategy that makes sense for you and your family. And if it is great, we'll do it. If not, that's okay too. The first challenge is that it usually takes longer, right? And you were kind enough to share with me that the main reason you wanted to move was blankety blank. You're moving to Texas. And you were also kind enough to share with me that you really want to have this done in the next like 120 days max. So what that means, I was thinking about this in preparation for our visit today, is that we have to be under contract in the next 30 to 45 days because it usually takes about 45, 60 days to close in this environment. So let me ask you a question. What would happen on the outside chance if we were still sitting here 120 days from now and the home wasn't sold? Let them tell you, well, that wouldn't be great. I'd have to leave without my wife and like that. Okay. And is that a serious consideration? No. All right. So that's something to consider with regards to that strategy because it usually takes longer. The second issue with that strategy is, remember how we discussed that your neighbors have done us a huge favor? It's like, well, yeah. And do you remember what that was? Well, yeah. I mean, I guess they tested the market. Yeah. So there are 3 other properties for sale right now in your geographic area, like in your neighborhood, that are asking 565, 570, and 580, and they've been on the market for 65 days and haven't sold. What do you think the buying public is telling them about their price and product? Shh, quiet. Yeah, I mean, I guess I see where you're coming from. Okay, so those are the concerns with regards to that first strategy. Now, the second strategy is where we position the property very competitively. By that, what I mean is right in alignment with what buyers and sellers have been agreeing to, or actually, Jose, just a hair below. The logic behind that strategy is we can get more than one person interested very quickly and potentially get more than one offer on the table. Now, let me ask you this. Who usually wins in a negotiation? The person that's making the offer or the person that is selling something if there's multiple people that want to buy it? Well, the person that's selling. Why is that? Well, you can dictate terms and conditions. That's exactly right. So that strategy not only ends up with when people compete, we can end up with more money. It also gives us the best terms. Can I explain to you what I mean?
Sure.
Well, yeah. Well, let's say we have 3 offers on the table. 2 of them are financed FHA and 1 of them is financed, but they're putting 50% down. Which one do you think we're probably going to go with? 50% down. Why is that? Well, it's just stronger financially. Exactly. Because what we also don't want to happen is, let's say we enter into an agreement with somebody, it falls through, and then we end up still on the market 120 days from now. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So either one of these strategies are okay, Jose. I just want you to feel comfortable with the one we end up choosing. So my question to you is based on what you're looking to accomplish and why, based on the time frame you'd like to make this happen in, based on what you value most in terms of this move, which one of those 2 strategies do you think would serve you and your family best, allow you to net the most, and do so in the most reasonable amount of time? And then be quiet and let him decide. Now, to Jose's point, let's say I say to Jose, well, Jose, I think I want to go with the higher. Like I want to start at 570. All right. So then where do you go from there? That's the question.
Got it.
I can do that. You do that, Jose, whatever you want.
No, what I was thinking is we've done an entire video on the pricing portion of the presentation last week. If somebody
Yeah,
wants to watch that entire video, I think we've covered a lot of this. Where I wanted to go with it was I remember the talk, meaning like let's say that we've already come to the conclusion they've chosen a higher price. They've chosen the
got
570 or
it.
the
Okay,
580 basically on the property.
got it.
Um, and now they've signed a contract. So now it's okay, what's the talk? This is the way I
Yeah,
remember the talk, but I think if you can do it afterwards, it would be good. So the way
yeah,
I remember the talk is this is what's going to happen next. They sign a contract. This is what's going to happen next. Now I'm setting expectations. So I do have an assistant. Her name is Maria. When I get back to the office, I'm going to give her a copy of the contract. Once she gets the copy of the contract, she's going to send that copy to you and she's going to send you a digital copy via email. After that, here's what's going to happen next. Maria is going to help me coordinate the professional photography. She's going to help me coordinate the lockbox and the for sale sign. And she's going to help me coordinate the cleaning lady to come out here and clean the property. What's going to happen after that is I am going to be giving you an update every, I think you would say every 7 to 10 days. I
yeah. That's
say
what I was
I'm
thinking.
going to be giving you an update every Wednesday, and I'm going to be letting you know what kind of, or let me retract. So she's going to help you coordinate the lockbox, the photography, and the cleaning lady, or whatever she's going to help coordinate. Then what's going to happen is the day that the property comes on the marketplace is you're going to hear from me and I'm going to call you and I'm going to say, congratulations, the property is now officially on the open market. Then what's going to happen from that point forward is I'm going to be giving you an update every 7 to 10 days or every Wednesday. And I'm going to be letting you know what kind of activity and what kind of feedback we're getting on the property. And then that's where I remember you going into, do you know what those conversations or do
Yeah.
you know what this is going to be going over? I'll let you take over, but that's
Okay.
kind of where I wanted to start
Got it,
off with
got
the
it.
price
So
reduction
so
script.
so let's say they say to you like, "Yep, we're ready to go. We want to start at like 570, which is the higher option." You're like, "Okay, excellent." So now that we've agreed on how to position the property, well, first here's what I would actually do. It's like, okay, so yes, I have no problem with that. And let's say we see together as a team, Jose, after like maybe 2, 3 weeks tops, that the marketplace is not responding. In other words, we're getting showings and no offers, or very few showings, if any at all. At that point, would you be prepared to make an adjustment? Now, I do the same thing again because that's the way humans, like adults, you kind of instruct them because I'm signaling to you we're gonna have to lower the price without me saying it to you, and then I'm quiet, and then Jose might say something like, "Yeah, like we're open to it," or if he's like, "No," then I may need to address it. But let's go with the one where he's like, "Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd be open to that," provided that we can see that you're giving your best efforts. Like, okay, excellent. So I have no problem with that. So we're in agreement on where to get started off at. Do you have any other questions or concerns for me before we take care of the appropriate paperwork? No.
Nope.
Take care of the paperwork. So don't have the conversation about an adjustment before you take care of the paperwork. Like sign the contract, right? Take care of
Yeah.
the paperwork. It's like, okay, great. So, and what Jose said is you manage kind of expectations procedurally. So, what's going to happen next? My assistant's going to reach out to you. And we're going to schedule a time for photography. And the photographer will come out. They'll take pictures. You can actually give the photographer the key. He'll have a lockbox with him. He'll put the lockbox on. And then it usually takes like 48 hours for him to get those back to us because he's got to process them and everything. And then once we get those back, we'll have all the marketing in place. We'll send you a copy of the pictures for review and a copy of the write up because nobody knows the home better than you. So, if you have any input, we're open to that. And then shortly thereafter, we'll be up and on active on the market. And then you'll get updates from me every 7 to 10 days, letting you know what's going on and if we need to make any adjustments, what they are. Sound like a
Got it.
plan? And they're like, yeah, it sounds good. Yeah. And we're going to know together as a team if what we're doing is working in terms of price and product. You know how we'll know that? And they're like, how's that? Well, we're going to have a lot of showings and we'll have offers on the table, which is really exciting. And typically what we see is 3+ showings per week. We start to see offers come in shortly thereafter. The second potential outcome is we could get showings and no offers or very few showings, if any at all. Now, I don't believe we'll be in that last category. Having looked at this information together, the marketplace is showing us we seem to be right in striking distance. At the same time, I'll be monitoring that very closely and we'll be giving you updates. And again, if we need to make an adjustment, I'll just let you know what it is. Fair enough? And they're like, yeah, that's fair. So I'm letting them know up front This is what's going to happen. And notice I said, if we need to make any adjustments, they know what that is. They're not silly. You know what I'm saying? Like I'll just give you updates and let you know what those are. And if we need to make them. Sound good? Yeah. Now, here's where you have to earn the right to get an adjustment. So I've set up the conversation, that quadra, that the frame. Here's how we determine value. Here's how we'll know if they're seeing value in our price and product. We have options that we chose, right? And I actually asked them right on the spot when he's like, I want to do 5.7. He's like, yeah, we can give that a shot. I think I'm certainly not opposed to that. At the same time, if we see together as a team, I'm giving you updates every day and or every week and letting you know what's going on. And we see that the marketplace isn't responding favorably. In other words, we're getting showings, no offers, or very few showings, if any at all. At that point, would you be prepared to make an adjustment? So I'm addressing it like right now, not like a month from now, like right now, right? So then I manage the expectation. What's going to happen? I'm going to give you updates. And if we need to make any adjustments, I'll keep you up to date as far as that's concerned. Now, the moment that it goes on the market, you need to call them.
Okay, and say congratulations.
This is a campaign to earn the right to ask them for an adjustment. Okay, because what 100%. A lot of agents will do is because it was interesting, Jose, back in the past, what I remember distinctly, Jose, like it would like eat you up because it's very important to you that you're a super high level of integrity person, and it would eat you up because you thought it was your fault that it wasn't selling. And you took ownership over the price. So you felt like internally conflicted to go back to them and ask them for an adjustment. And I remember saying to him, like, hey, bro, like, you realize that has nothing to do with you, right? Like, if they want to get mad at somebody, they can open up their door and yell at all their neighbors who agreed to sell it for less. Like, that's what's really going on. It's market. You're just relaying the data and the information. So, and I shared with you, you have to earn the right. And it begins with as soon as it hits the market, right? You want to overly communicate up front, because when they list the property with you, there's like this ether, they'll let you watch their kids for the weekend. If it's on the market for 30 days and you don't sell and you ask for one reduction, that gets knocked down a notch. They won't invite you to the barbecue. 2 months, you have to ask for another one, like even less. And 3 months, they hate your guts. So you have like a specific time frame to like earn the right to even request an adjustment. And it begins with, as soon as you hit the market, hey, congratulations. Super excited. Property's up and active on the market. The pictures look great. Have you seen them? They're like, yeah, Susie sent them to me. Yep. And, as we discussed, Jose, we're going to know right away as a team if the buyers see value in our price and product. The way we're going to know that is we're going to get lots of showings. We're going to get offers on the table. If for some reason the buying public is not seeing value, we'll know that too. We'll get showings and no offers, or very few showings, if any at all. I don't believe we'll be in that last category. At the same time, I'll be giving you updates every 7 to 10 days, letting you know what's going on and if we need to make any adjustments. Do you have any questions for me? Nope. Okay, great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity on your business and look forward to speaking to you soon. Excellent.
Then what also happens, guys, whenever you're setting it up this way, this is what happened for me. Like, I'm letting them know what to expect. So I'm letting them know, hey, here's what's going to happen next. My assistant, her name is Maria. She's going to call you to say congratulations. I'm also saying, like, look, she's going to coordinate the photography. She's going to do this. So they're not expecting me to do that. Then what I'm also telling them is, look, on the day that it comes on the market, you're going to be hearing from me. So if it takes 2 weeks to get the property ready for sale, they're not going to be like, why hasn't Jose reached out to me, or why isn't Jose in communication with me? They know what to expect. Then when I'm telling them I'm going to give you an update every Wednesday, what you're going to recognize is that a lot of the times, if they have questions, they'll hold off until that update that you're giving them. So you're not hearing from them on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, or better yet, they're not wondering like, why isn't Jose calling me on a Tuesday? Yes. Or why isn't Jose calling me on a Wednesday, on a Monday? And then it also shows that you're a man of your word, meaning like if you say you're going to call them every 7 to 10 days, you call them every 7 to 10 days.
Correct.
If you say that you're going to call them every Wednesday, you call them every Wednesday, no matter what.
And that's you earning the right? And the other thing I think is true is for me, when I was listing property in super high volume, 10, 15, 18 homes a month, the reason why I said 7 to 10 is because it gave me a window.
Flexibility.
Because half that inventory would actually sell before I would even have to call them. Right. So, or a portion of it would. So I didn't want to lock myself in, because otherwise, like for a whole day, if you have like 25, 30 listings, I'm gonna have to like just talk to those people that whole day. So it gave me flexibility. That's why I changed it to 7 to 10, because what started to happen is as the inventory started to grow, precisely what Jose was saying, they were like, hey, bro, you told me you were going to call me on Wednesday. And I'm like, yeah, well, I got through like 22 of them and I didn't get to, you know what I mean? So it just gave me flexibility. But that's a perfect point what Jose's saying.
Well, and then that's probably one of the things and you mentioned this to me because I was like, look, I've got like 15 listings. Like I can't talk to all of them at one time or all in one day. You're like, well, look, instead of every Wednesday, you're going to have to do it every 7 to 10 days. And that's probably one of the adjustments that I need to get to more listings if I wanted to get to more listings, because that extra day could actually do it. At this point, I've chosen to keep it on Wednesdays. I like the predictability, but if I wanted to grow in listing inventory, because that was one of the challenges that you told me you had like, it was good when it was a smaller amount of listings, but when it grew to 22 to 30 listings, you were like, it was a different constraint now that you had in your business, and you had to make that change to that conversation basically. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've had that.
Hey, one of the Facebook people are like, sad problem to have. I feel sorry for Jose. Hey, boo-hoo, Aaron and Jose. You have too many listings. You can't talk to them all one day. That's funny. Go ahead.
That's so funny. So what I was going to say is it's becoming a process. So first you have the talk with them after you basically get a contract signed. Then you call them the day that the property comes on the marketplace. Then what does the first update call look like basically? And keep in mind, you have not asked for a price reduction yet up until this point. Up until this point, you're basically just delivering on everything that you've said, and you've set up the framework so that if you do have to ask for a price reduction, it's not just like the first time, basically.
Yeah, and most importantly, because think about this, like conceptually, right? There's a method to the madness. So we all know, if I was to say to you, how many times does somebody have to say no before they say yes? Like, if you're a serious student, you know it's like 6, 7 times, like statistically, they've studied it, you know, they've quantified it. Well, if the first time you're asking for an adjustment is 3 weeks to a month into the listing, that's only one time, bro. If you notice, I started at the listing presentation. Like, if we see that the marketplace is not responding favorably in terms of showings and offers, or, you know, lack thereof, or very few showings, if any at all, at that point, Jose, would you be prepared to make an adjustment? That's the first time I asked. Then once we agree on where we're going to position, I bring it up again. Yes. So as we discussed, we'll know together as a team if the marketplace sees value in terms of price and product. If so, lots of showings and offers. If not, we'll get showings and no offers, or very few showings, if any at all. And at that point, you know, we can discuss making it a small appropriate adjustment. Look at that language, a small appropriate adjustment. Okay, that doesn't sound too bad.
That way you're not scaring them.
Hey, like, I'm not saying we're going to the dentist and doing a root canal. I'm like, a small appropriate adjustment. You know what I'm saying? Like, it sounds like, oh yeah, it sounds like a little goûter, like a little, you know, a little cookie. Like, that's fine. And but that's the second time I've had it. Now, when I call you when it's up and active on the market, and I remind you, as we discussed, we're going to know together as a team if it sees value. Third time. Then 7 or 10 days on the market, call them up. Hey, Jose, it's Aaron Novello, your agent. How you doing? Doing great, man. Awesome. Just calling to give you a quick update. You got a moment for me? Yep. Well, it's been 9 days since we put it on the market. And as of right now, we've actually had 4 showings on the property. Were you aware of that? They're like, yeah, we're really excited. Yeah, me too. Which is great, because as we discussed, usually at like 3+ showings, we start to see offers come in shortly thereafter. It means that what we're doing, marketing the property, you know, networking with top agents, it's working. At the same time, you know, as we discussed, we'll know in like another maybe 10, 15 days if they see enough value to make us an offer, right? Because we either get showings and no offers, or very few showings, if any at all. Now, the great news is that we're not in that last category right out of the gate, right? So I'll continue to pay close attention, and I'll give you those updates every, you know, 7 to 10 days. I'm encouraged by the current activity, and hopefully the next phone call I'll have with you is with an offer on the table. Fair enough. They're like, yeah, that's great. Excellent. You got any questions for me? Nope. Awesome. Appreciate your business, and make it a great day. Done. But look, now we've talked about it 4 times. Next 7 to 10 days, same deal. So now we've only been on the market 14 days, guys. And you want, this is also what I would call a honeymoon period. So like, again, at the beginning, they love you. As time progresses and they need adjustments, or they get an offer and it falls apart, yeah, it's like tension, and
get nervous.
It's no longer honeymoon anymore, right? No longer buddies sort of thing. So I want to over deliver. I want to over communicate at the beginning, right?
And then
And
and then
go
here's
ahead.
one of the things that I add too. So like when you said any questions, I'll say, and is there anything additional that you need from us at this time as well
Perfect.
too, basically. Like cuz sometimes they'll be like, "Well, Jose, I noticed that like in the description it says or in the terms it says 2-car garage and it's really a 3-car garage. Can you make that change?" Or I noticed that there's not a picture of the RV or whatever, or like little concerns that they may have. I ask that just in case they do have something like that we can address it, which we want to make sure those things are addressed. That way it gives you the right to the getting the price reduction. The other thing I was going to say is, how is this different than what you're asking? Here's the approach that I hear from most agents. Most agents take the listings, they don't call them for 30 days, and then they call them on day 30 asking to reduce the price. Mistake 100%.
That's like going on no dates, getting no flowers, not going out to a restaurant, not doing any of that and being like, what's up? It's
And
like,
then being mad, and then being mad if you don't get it.
yeah, and then being mad, when it doesn't work out. So it's just not a mature approach, and you're setting yourself up to get pushback. And if we back up, Jose, what oftentimes happens too, not only are they not engaging in a overly communicating and not engaging in that honeymoon period and reminding them regularly of like, hey, here's, kind of procedurally, we'll know together as a team if the marketplace sees value. What they also did during the presentation is like, I believe we can get this. I think we can get this. Like, I think that I can help you to, get exactly what you want. And what that does is backs you into a corner, because then when you call on day 30, not only did you not do the honeymoon period and over communicate and kind of manage expectations and had the conversation 5-6 times before you even asked for an adjustment, on top of it, you said that you could get. So then do you know what they say to you, Jose? Well, you told me, you said, and then you're like, oh man, all these sellers, they're just, I'm like, nah, dude, it's you, bro. It's your approach. It's the way that you're presenting that's actually creating the problem.
So let's get into, let's say it's day 14. What does that conversation look like? And then let's get into the actual price reduction. Like let's say day 21 or day 30, whatever it is for you.
So at day 14, we're at 5 times we've mentioned it
Talk
to them. And it's the same conversation. Hey, Jose, it's Aaron. Just want to give you a quick update. Let you know what's going on. You got a moment? Yep. Well, as of right now, we've been on the marketplace for 14 days. And in that time frame, we've had 7 showings, which again is great. It means that what we're doing is working. We're driving traffic into the property. At the same time, having followed up with all of those buyers, none of them obviously has made us an offer yet. And as we discussed, right, we would know if the marketplace saw value in price and product with showings and offers. And, as of right now, we've had a good amount of showings, just hasn't produced an offer yet. So what my suggestion would be is we give it another 7 to 10 days. And if the marketplace responds favorably, we get an offer, great. If not, we can put our heads together and perhaps adjust the approach in some way. Does that make sense? Now, notice, did I say, yeah, put our heads together and lower the price? Nope. I said adjust the approach in some way. Does that make sense? Jose's like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. So again, I appreciate your time and appreciate your business and look forward to reconnecting soon. Great. Now, so we've had that. I've mentioned it to them 6 times or 5 times. Now, day 21 is where I actually ask for the adjustment. Okay. And people, I think something to address here, Jose, is sometimes people think that that's too fast. The sellers are going to tell you it's too fast, but I hear agents, well, that's not fast enough. I'm like, you haven't sold enough property, bro. Like if the marketplace sees value, they tell you right away. 3 weeks is ample time. Truthfully, 14 days is probably ample time, right? So, but don't get caught up into that. And if you ask at 3 weeks, and let's say they postpone or stall, that means you're going to get it the next time you talk to them. Versus if you wait, it just keeps pushing out the time frame with which they actually make the adjustment. So ask sooner than you feel comfortable with. But that third conversation is going to sound like, the 21-day conversation is going to sound like this. Ring, ring.
Hello.
Hey, Jose, it's Aaron Novello, your agent. How are you, man?
Good. Do you have an offer for me already?
Yeah, I know. I'm equally as excited as you are to produce that offer. And that's precisely actually why I'm calling today. Do you got a moment for me?
I do.
Yeah. So I want you to know that, I've take the responsibility you provided me with really seriously, protect the value, get as much as you can. I've done a lot of homework in preparation for this conversation. I've spoken to agents that have shown the property, and really, I redid an analysis, and I'm prepared to give you the guidance to ensure that we can get under contract in the next 30 days. How does that sound?
That would be great.
Awesome. So the first thing is we've been on the market now, looks like for 21 days, and in that time frame, Jose, we've actually had 12 showings. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did, man.
Yeah, which is great, because what it means is that what we're doing is working. We're driving traffic into the property, the prospecting, networking we're doing on your behalf, marketing. At the same time, Jose, having that number of showings and no offers, it's actually beginning to concern me. May I share with you why?
Yeah, tell me.
Well, the buying public, they're telling us very clearly, Jose, that they see enough value to look. They're just not seeing enough value to buy. Now, when we originally connected, you shared with me that the main reason you wanted to sell this property is you're relocating, to Texas, and you wanted to be out there in the next 120 days. Now, is that still the case, or has that changed?
No, I mean that's the goal.
Okay. So being that that's the case, and we've had this number of showings and no offers, the marketplace is showing us an adjustment is in order in terms of the price. The question is just simply how much, right? Now, if we were getting, Jose, like 25, 30 showings in this time frame and no offers, we wouldn't be missing it much at all. Maybe like 10, 15,000 bucks in this price point. Being that, gosh, we're getting like 3 showings a week, marketplace is showing us we're missing by a little bit more than that, more like 7%. And that would take us from the million that we're at right now to 930. Now, do I have your permission to go ahead and put that in so we can get this property sold for you?
Did you say 930?
Yeah, that's what the marketplace is showing us.
Oh man. But all right, so I'm going to stop the conversation right there. And this is where one of 3 things is going to happen. Either they're going to say, okay, if that's what we have to do, Aaron,
right out of the gate, they're going to be like, okay.
Or they're going to say, that's a lot lower than what I was thinking. They're going to say, can we give it more time?
Yes.
Or they're going to say, can we reduce it by X?
Yeah.
Or they might say something like, well, what are you doing to market my property? Or what are you doing to promote my home? Those are like the potential outcomes. But at this point, what most people do is they go into this 5-minute conversation and they never ask for a specific number, and they never ask for the actual price reduction. If you notice, what Aaron did is he said, in order to get the property sold, we would need to be at X. Do I have your permission to go ahead and put that in? This way we can get the property sold, and then shut up.
And to Jose's point, what I'm doing, if you notice, there was a sequence there. So it's like, what's happened? We've been on the market, 21 days, we had 12 showings. And then it's like, what's happened? Then I revisit motivation. You were kind enough to share with me the main reason you want to sell is this, and you want to be there by then. Is that still the case, or has anything changed? Nope, still the case. Okay. What we need to do. Marketplace is showing us we need to make an adjustment. The question is just simply how much. And then ask for it, and then be quiet. Because my experience, and notice it didn't take that long to get through that. I think a lot of people, Jose, have a lot of internal tension about asking and having this conversation. So what they do is they like fill the air with all these words. They talk for like 10 minutes and they haven't even asked for anything. But the seller knows what you're like doing. You're like tiptoeing around it. You know what I mean? Versus it took me 3 minutes to get through that. Now all the objections are going to come. But now I'm waiting for them. So the way I describe this to people, it's like, imagine playing baseball and you're at the plate, right? And I'm waiting, like I'm trying to hit. But I'm looking in the stands. I'm like looking here. I'm like talking to Jose. I'm like, what's up, bro? And the pitcher pitches and it goes right down the pipe. I'm like, I'm not prepared. Well, what happens though if I'm like this and I'm ready? Now I'm prepared. And
well, if I'm pitching, you still wouldn't hit it, if I'm pitching.
Are you gonna do that with all these people watching, bro? Come on, man. So now that I'm not, but now I'm ready. And by walking it through this sequence, right? What's happened? Revisit motivation, tell them what you need to do, and then be quiet. Like, just now I'm ready for the objections. Do you see?
Instead of being caught off guard,
instead of being
basically.
caught off guard. So as you're blabbing and talking about like all this other stuff, they're going to be like, well, what are you going to do to market the home? And then you're blabbing and like blah, blah, blah. And they're like, boo, they just like throwing all these pitches at you and you're not even ready. Versus now I'm waiting. I'm calm and clear. And I'm literally waiting for Jose's response.
And you're not reacting to it. So, and they're only going to say a couple of number of things. So like one of the things that they might say is, well, Jose, can't we reduce it by $10,000 or something small? Like, because Aaron's asking for a $70,000 price reduction. So the way I would
felt
handle
everybody
that,
on this stream watching when I asked for 70, they're like, oh my God.
and the reason he's asking for what amount needs to happen is that, look, guys, this is the way I look at it. And it's also a baseball analogy. You ask for the first price reduction, that's strike one. You ask for the second price reduction, that's strike two. You ask for the third price reduction, you might have struck out, and there's a very good likelihood that they may even try to cancel the listing on you by this point because they hate your guts by the third one. So what most agents do is they're looking at this from a dollar amount versus a percentage amount, basically. So this is the way I learned it. Like, if you're getting a lot of showings, like 5, 6, 7 showings in a week, and you're not getting any offers, you might be missing by like 2 to 3%, something very small. Let's say you're getting 3 to 4 showings a week, you might be missing by 5 to 7%. Let's say you're hearing crickets, like maybe like 1 showing a week or even 0 showings a week, you're missing by 10 plus percent. Meaning that, like,
what
on $1 million
saying,
property, 900,000.
Yes. And what Jose's saying is so valuable because I remember distinctly having this conversation with him. And internally, it felt like I was cutting out pounds of his flesh. He was like, oh, really? 100,000? And I'm like, yeah, dude, like that's the reality. And to your point, what agents also do is because they're viscerally, internally uncomfortable having this conversation, they ask for smaller amounts. So then what happens is you
strike one.
Yeah, you play this stair step game where you're coming down in like ever smaller amounts versus if you just asked for what was required, they would have got it done to begin with. So if somebody says to me, well, like, Aaron, can't we come down like in a smaller amount? Like maybe half of that. Maybe we come down like 35,000. Yeah, of course we can. Jose, like you're the boss. My job is to help you to make an informed decision. It's never to talk you into doing anything. Can I share with you what would concern me for you and your family and how much you end up getting if you chose that approach? Notice that language. If I said to you, can I share with you, Jose, what concerns me? I want everybody to look very closely, okay? No, you see anybody in there that gives a shit? Like, nobody cares, bro, what concerns you. But when I put it in that proper language, and I'm like, yo, can I share with you what would concern me for you and your family and how much you net if you chose that approach? Jose's going to pay attention now. Because it's like, oh, this is about, well, yeah, like, what do you mean? Well, you know, it's super interesting because the neighbors, they've actually done us a gigantic favor, Jose. Do you know what it is? What's that? They've already tested the market at those prices and it's not working, right? They've been on the market for 60, 90, 180 days and they haven't sold just yet. So let me ask you a question. Being that there's this other one that's on the market at 1.4 and they've been there for 65 days, does it seem like a realistic expectation that we would get a different response? Shh. Quiet. Then I would ask, I say, yeah, you know, in preparation for this conversation, I did some homework. And right now in your price point, in the last 30 days, there have been 3 homes that have sold. And what I'd like to do is just go over what they were asking. Would that be okay? He's like, yeah, $999, $985, and $989. Let me ask you a question. Where's the buying public telling us they're seeing value in homes that are similar to yours? Well, probably around there. And if you were a buyer, don't you feel the same? Well, yeah. So you see, Jose, I'd much rather you make an adjustment that the marketplace is showing us is required versus making a smaller one because it perhaps maybe is a little bit more palatable and feels better. And then we end up chasing the market down. I mean, you don't want to chase the market down, do you? No. Yeah. And at the million, you're going to net 355,000 from the sale. Would that allow you to make this move happen? Well, yeah, it probably would. Great.
Not is that enough?
Yeah. Yeah. Notice, never is it enough because it's never fucking enough. Instead, it's like, would that allow you to make this move happen? And they're like, well, yeah, I mean, we could do it on that. It's like, yeah. So then with that being said, may I make a suggestion? Well, yeah, let's make the adjustment that the marketplace is showing us is required. So that way we can be one of the next ones to sell and we don't have to revisit this conversation again. I mean, you don't want to do that, do you? Well, no, I definitely don't. Okay. So do I have your permission to go ahead and put it in and make that adjustment to $9.99? It's like, yeah, but if I do that, I'm not going to take any offers less. Great. My job is to bring you offers. It's never to talk you into taking them. And I'd much rather us be in a situation, Jose, where I can bring you an offer and you flat out say no. We tell them to go pound sand. Or I can negotiate on your behalf and try to pull them up to where we want them to be versus being in a situation where we're not getting any offers. Does that make sense to you? And Jose's like, yeah, that makes sense. Great. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and make that adjustment. We'll update all the marketing. We'll go down the list of anybody who's reached out, anybody who's checked it out online, any of the other agents that have shown it, and say, hey guys, if you liked it at one point, $1,070,000, you're going to love it at $9.99. So hopefully my next phone call is with an offer on the table. How's that sound? And he's like, okay. And then you move on.
Yeah. And it's funny because it reminds me of a situation where I had a listing at $9.99. We did a 10% price reduction to $8.99. All of a sudden, it's a hot listing and it sells with multiple offers. The other thing I was going to say, in a different way that you can handle it is like, let's say they say, well, can't we do $10,000? The way I would potentially handle it as well, too, I might say something like $10,000, $1 million property. That comes out to about 1%. So here's what I would say to you, Aaron. If we were getting 15 to 20 showings a week, the marketplace would be telling us that we're missing by maybe 1 to 3%. If we were getting X showings a week, the market would be telling us that we were missing by X. Because we're getting X showings a week, the marketplace is telling us that we're missing by about 7%. Once again, Aaron, that would take us from the $1 million down to 930,000. Would I have your permission to go ahead and put that in? So if they tell me that, I do the math percentage wise, and then I bring it back to if we were getting X amount of showings, or if we were getting people coming back and talking about writing offers, then you're right. That 1 to 3% adjustment would be right in line. But because we're not getting that and we're only getting 3 to 4 showings a week, the marketplace is showing us that we're missing by a larger amount, right around 7 to 10%. That would take us from X to Y. Would I have your permission to put that in? That way we can get the property sold for you.
Yeah, and that's perfect. And then one of the things I would say too there, I would do the same thing, just in a little different way. I'd be like, yeah, and truthfully, if we were only like, I love how you're like, yeah, $1 million, 10,000. Yeah,
already know what it is.
Like he knows what it is. All of that is helping them to realize like that's infinitesimally small compared to what they're asking. It's intentional. It's purposeful. So it's like, yeah, like $1 million, 10%. It's like 1%. Let me ask you this, right? And I mean this lovingly. If we were only missing by 1%, do you think we'd be having this conversation, or do you think we'd have offers on the table? And then quiet. And it's a little bit of a confrontational question, but if you do it properly, they'll be like, well, yeah, I guess so. And sometimes I would make a statement. I'd be like, honestly, in my professional experience, having helped so many families, if we were only missing by 1%, we wouldn't be in this situation. We'd have showings and offers on the table. So, again, I'd much rather see you make an adjustment that the marketplace is showing is required versus making a smaller one and then have to revisit this conversation down the road. Does that make sense to you? And they're like, well, yeah. And then they might say to you, well, what do you think it needs to be at? They're going to ask you your opinion. You'll be like, well, I appreciate you asking. And I take that responsibility very seriously. I wouldn't propose a suggestion that the marketplace was showing us it was absolutely required. So I like to make data-driven decisions. What I'd like to do is to go over with you other properties that are on the market right now. I can share my screen real quick so we can see how long they've been on the market, what they look like on the inside, and then ones that have actually gone under contract. And from that, we'll be able to determine together as a team the appropriate adjustment. Make sense? They're like, sure, that makes sense. And then, right? So this conversation, you need to understand that like the vast majority of Americans have almost all of their net worth tied up into their house. So because of that, it's like, it's very difficult to look at it as a commodity that's bought and sold. And it's like everything. It's their life savings. So to get people to come to the self-realization that they need to adjust their price, it's not easy. Right? Because it's like you're taking away their life savings sort of thing. It's not us, it's the market, right? But being impartial, recognizing that it's not my fault. Like the marketplace dictates value, not me. and recognizing that it's my job to have these conversations with them to help this self-discover. I think internally, if you can disconnect from this like ownership and like it's a reflection of you and you did something wrong and that you're bad, the easier it is to have these conversations in an impartial, non-emotional way. And people need us to be impartial and non-emotional so that way they can get into that state so they can think logically about it and not be emotional about it.
Yeah. And then what I was thinking is maybe we can do like a part 2 on this, because I think that there's still so many different things that could happen. So there's also different ways of asking for price reductions as well too. Like not just by a percentage amount. There's
Correct.
also like different objections that we're going to get. Like for example, like one of the ones I used to get stuck on was, well, why would I make an adjustment if I haven't received any offers?
Yes.
Like if somebody like really liked our property, like they would make us an offer. So unless you have any offers, I'm not reducing the price. And I used to get stuck on that one. But guess what, guys? I'm going to make you guys wait till part 2
Let's
to basically
go. That's
listen
my
to that
boy right
one. All
there.
right.
Hell yeah.
So
Listen, elite builders coast to coast. If you liked this live stream, we're going to do it every Friday, coming to you guys with legit, straightforward, tactical information. Be sure to tune in to the next one, team. Let's go. Let's grow. Elite builders coast to coast. Yo. Yeah.